He had learned early that the world was louder than it should be. Not in sound but in presence. People passed through hallways, buses, streets, classrooms, but behind them, beside them, sometimes even inside them were others, figures that didn't quite belong. Some faded like heat haze, some looked as real as anyone alive. He saw them all. And he hated it. A third eye, someone once jokingly called it when he was younger, like it was a gift. But to him it felt more like a crack in reality he could never seal, so he did what he always did, he ignored it. He was an independent student, part-time worker, always moving between shifts and schoolwork, always tired enough to pretend the impossible wasn't there. If he didn't look too long, maybe it wouldn't look back. That was the rule. Until it didn't work anymore. It happened on an ordinary afternoon near the school gate. An elderly woman tripped on the uneven pavement, her basket spilling imaginary groceries across the ground. Students walked past, some glanced, most didn't. He sighed. Great, he muttered to himself, already annoyed at the interruption to his schedule. He walked over, crouched down, and helped her up without thinking too much about it. You okay, Grandma? He asked. The old woman stared at him. Not like a normal person would. Her eyes sharpened, too sharp, too aware. Then she whispered, trembling. You can see us. He froze. That sentence did not belong in a normal world. He slowly let go of her arm and stepped back. No, he said immediately, too fast, too firm. Then he turned and walked away like nothing happened. Behind him, the old woman didn't move, but he could feel her gaze following him long after he left. And for the first time in a long while, something in the air felt like it was smiling. The next day was worse. Exams. Dead silence in the classroom. Only pens scratching paper, clocks ticking, nervous breaths being held like secrets. He focused, he had to focus. Until a sound outside. Fast footsteps. Running. Then a sudden crash in the corridor. His head snapped up before he could stop himself. Through the classroom door window he saw a boy lying on the floor outside. Same school uniform, same age, pale, disoriented, too pale. The teachers didn't react, no one else seemed to notice. But he did. Again, he whispered under his breath. He stood up abruptly, chair scraping loudly. Hey, where are you going? The proctor hissed. He ignored them. Outside, the boy was trying to get up, confused, like he didn't understand why the world was unstable beneath him. Are you okay? He asked, kneeling beside him. The boy looked up. And smiled faintly. Too calmly. I think I fell again, the boy said. Something about that answer didn't make sense. Not at all. A cold pressure formed behind his eyes, that familiar instinct, that refusal. Don't think about it, don't confirm it, don't. You're dead, he said flatly. The boy blinked. Then laughed softly. Most people don't say it that directly. Silence. The corridor stretched unnaturally long behind them, as if the building itself was listening. The boy tilted his head. You really can see us, he said, so the grandma wasn't lying. He stood up slowly, no pain, no weight, no real presence of impact. Then he offered a hand. I think we need to talk. He didn't want to listen. He really didn't. But somehow he still did. That was how he ended up learning the truth, fragmented piece by piece. The boy had no name he could remember clearly, only that he wasn't alone. There were others in the school like him, spirits who stayed behind because something tethered them here, unfinished regrets, unanswered feelings, broken endings. And they needed help. Not from priests, not from rituals. From someone who could see them. Someone like him. I don't want this, he said immediately, find someone else. There is no one else, the boy replied simply. That should have been the end of it. But it was. Because the next day the grandma was waiting again, and so were others, quietly appearing at the edges of his life, watching him like he was already part of something he hadn't agreed to join. And the boy, this ghost boy, kept appearing too. Not forcing. Just waiting. Until finally exhaustion won. Fine, he said one night, standing in his cramped apartment doorway still in his work uniform. But I'm not doing this because I believe you, I'm doing this so you all stop showing up in my life. The boy smiled. That's enough. That was the beginning. And neither of them knew yet that the last unfinished business wouldn't belong to the dead. It would belong to the one who was still breathing. At first it was simple. At least that's what the boy said. Help them remember what they left behind, he explained while sitting cross-legged on the edge of the student's apartment floor as if he belonged there. The student didn't correct him, he just continued packing his things for work. Then they move on, the boy added. And I go back to normal life, the student replied immediately. The boy smiled faintly, sure. That answer should have been reassuring. It was. Because nothing about this arrangement felt temporary anymore. Their first case wasn't dramatic. It was a girl who kept appearing in the library at exactly 4:17 p.m. sitting in the same seat, staring at a book she never opened. The student noticed her instantly. Of course he did. The boy ghost followed behind him, hands in his pockets like a bored classmate. That one's been stuck for months, the boy said. Why? She won't leave until someone returns what she lost. The student exhaled, and what is that? The girl looked up suddenly. For a moment their eyes met. Then she smiled soft, almost relieved. My letter, she whispered. It turned out she had hidden a confession letter inside a library book before she died, a letter she never delivered, a feeling she never risked. The boy guided him quietly, no instructions, no pressure, just vague nudges. Try there. Not that shelf. She's looking at you now. And somehow annoyingly it worked. When the student finally found the letter tucked behind a loose page, the girl's expression changed. Like something inside her finally exhaled. She didn't thank them. She just stood up and faded. The air felt lighter afterward. But the student didn't feel good. He felt watched. By something other than ghosts. By the boy. After that the boy started staying longer. At first it was just to explain things. Then it became, it's easier if I'm nearby. Then it became nothing was said at all. The student would come home from work and find him sitting on the floor, staring at nothing. You don't sleep, the student muttered one night, dropping his bag. I don't need to, the boy replied. That's creepy. The boy smiled, you're getting used to it. That was the problem. He was getting used to it. To the silence. To the presence. To the way the boy existed in his space like a shadow that learned how to talk. And worse. To the way it no longer felt wrong. The second spirit they helped was different. A man in a hospital gown who kept appearing in the school hallway, staring at the ceiling like he was waiting for something to fall. But this time the boy ghost hesitated. Longer than usual. You know him, the student asked. I think so, the boy said quietly. But he couldn't remember. That was new. Ghosts weren't supposed to forget. Yet every time they got closer to the truth of him, the boy's expression changed, like static interfering with a signal. The student noticed. You're not like the others, he said. The boy didn't respond. That silence stayed longer than it should have. The clue came late one night. A flicker of memory the boy couldn't hold on to, but the student could follow. A name on a chart. A building. A room number that felt too specific to ignore. They stood outside the hospital together. The boy looked uneasy for the first time. This is wrong, he said. You asked for help, the student replied. I didn't ask for this. But he followed anyway. Because the student had already opened the door. Inside. A body. Connected to machines, breathing but barely, alive but unreachable. The boy froze. The student didn't speak. He just looked between the boy and the body. Slowly it clicked into place. You're not dead, he said. The boy's voice came out quieter than ever. I think I'm not. The realization didn't feel like relief. It felt like something breaking. Because if he wasn't dead, then everything between them was something else entirely. Something neither of them had names for yet. They left the hospital in silence. Outside, the night air felt heavier than usual. The boy walked a step behind the student. Then beside him. Then not at all. You should have told me, the student finally said. I didn't know, the boy replied, not fully. A pause. Then. If I wake up, will I still see you? The question landed too softly. The student stopped walking. For the first time since this started, he didn't have an immediate answer. "I don't know," he said. And that was the truth. The boy smiled faintly. "That's the first honest thing you've said since I met you." That night neither of them said goodbye. But something between them already felt like it was being pulled apart. Quietly. Slowly. Like a thread refusing to stay whole. The hospital room was too quiet for something so alive. Machines blinked in steady rhythm, curtains barely moved, light from the hallway spilled in like something hesitant to enter. And in the bed. He woke up. It started with breath. Then awareness. Then pain, sharp, delayed, like his body was remembering how to exist. A nurse called it a miracle. Doctors called it recovery. The boy called it something he couldn't name. Because as soon as his eyes opened, something else shut off. Not fully. Just enough. The student wasn't there when it happened. But he came later. Standing at the doorway, hands in his pockets like he always did when he didn't know what to do with them. The boy turned his head slowly. Their eyes met. For a second. Nothing changed. Then the boy smiled. "Hey," he said softly. Like they had never met anywhere except this moment. The student froze. That smile wasn't wrong. It was just incomplete. "Do you remember me?" the student asked. A pause. "Too long." Then the boy shook his head. "I'm sorry," he said gently, "I don't think we've met before." That should have ended everything. It almost did. The student nodded once, polite, controlled, detached. "Right," he said, "sorry, wrong person." And then he left. Just like that. Because that was easier than asking why something inside him felt like it had been erased. Days passed. The student returned to work. Returned to school. Returned to pretending the world was normal again. And for a while it worked. No ghosts. No voices. No boy sitting in his apartment floor like he belonged there. Just silence. Peace. Distance. But peace has a way of feeling wrong when you've lived without it for too long. It happened on a late-night walk home. Streetlights stretched long across the pavement, the air was warm but heavy. He heard footsteps behind him. At first he ignored it. Then they matched his pace. Then they didn't stop when he did. He sighed. Seriously, he muttered. He turned sharply. And punched. Hard. Too fast. Too familiar. The person stumbled back. Ow! The voice froze him. Because it wasn't a ghost. It wasn't silence. It wasn't anything he expected. It was him. The boy. Alive, breathing, real. Standing there holding his jaw, blinking in shock. What the hell, the boy started. Then he stopped. Because he was looking at him properly now. And something in his expression shifted. Recognition but not memory. Emotion without explanation. "You," the boy said slowly, "I don't know why but I feel like I've been looking for you." The student's fists loosened. His chest didn't. "I pretended," the boy admitted after a long silence. They were sitting on a curb now, streetlight flickering above them like it couldn't decide whether to stay. "I told you I didn't remember you," he said, "in the hospital." The student didn't respond. "I thought maybe if I acted like it didn't happen, whatever I saw would stop feeling real." A pause. Then softer. "But it didn't." The student looked away. "That's because it was never just in your head." The boy nodded slightly, like he accepted that without understanding it. Then he said something quieter. "I think I liked you." The student froze. Not because it was sudden. But because it was. It had always been there. Between every silence. Every mission. Every moment neither of them named. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that," the student said. The boy gave a small tired laugh. "Me neither." They didn't fix it. They didn't define it. They didn't even try. But when the student stood up to leave, the boy stood up too. And walked with him. Like he always had. Like nothing had really ended. Like something was still unfinished. Something neither life nor death had successfully closed. And somewhere in the quiet between their steps, it felt like the world was still watching them. Waiting. Not for ghosts. Not for miracles. But for the part of the story they still hadn't admitted out loud.